Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Engineering a Service Revolution. How to establish a strong service culture and improve service quality and do it fast. My name is Ron Kaufman. I'm the founder and chairman of the company Up Your Service. I've been working with leaders in large organizations all over the world, in every possible industry, for more than 30 years. I've written the key lessons that we've learned over those 3 decades in this book, Uplifting Service, the proven path to delighting your customers, colleagues, and everyone else you meet. What you're going to learn in this webinar are some of the essential lessons from experience that we've learned in guiding organizations to a successful service revolution. Now, what do we actually mean by a service revolution? First, we're talking about changing the culture of service in an organization where service excellence is not already in the DNA, in the culture, in the fabric, in the performance of that organization. In other words, a service revolution is not for a company like Singapore Airlines. From the very beginning of their first flight, they had already decided that outstanding service performance for passengers was going to be the differentiating factor for Singapore Airlines. They don't need a revolution in service. Changi International Airport, Singapore's airport, the most awarded airport in the world. It's the front door for the entire nation. They know that service and service culture are incredibly important. They don't need a service revolution. They're already doing very well. Disney does not need a service revolution. Ritz-Carlton does not need a revolution in service. Zappos, the online player, has built their entire culture based on wow levels of service, and if you go visit their headquarters in Las Vegas, you'll see how they do it. They may need continuous, ongoing evolution to keep their service on top, but they don't need a service revolution. So who does? A service revolution is needed when leadership of an organization wants to achieve a dramatic improvement in service to external customers, clients, members, patients, visitors, guests, whatever they may be called. But they need to do it fast. Then you need something that's more revolutionary. For example, when this property opened in Singapore, the world's first integrated resort, 6 months after opening, the TripAdvisor scores were not where they wanted them to be. They needed and achieved a revolution in service, growing TripAdvisor score by more than 20 points in just 6 months. We helped them do that, and that's an example of a revolution. Here's a telecommunications company in the Philippines, dramatically losing market share and financial results that were showing that kind of a loss, turning it around in a very short period of time through a revolution in the service quality performance they provide for their customers and in a revolution in the culture of service. Here's an example on the financial side. This is a resort property group based out of Mauritius. I'll be talking about more later in the webinar. Look at the financial results. This company was actually headed for bankruptcy, but in a very short period of time, turned it dramatically around, achieved a successful revolution based on improved quality of service. Here, a national airline, also running in the red, losing money and wanting to turn it around. And you can see the turnaround, dramatic, substantial, and fast. In this case, the compliments to complaints ratio going from 1-to-1 to 10-to-1 over a period of 24 months. So, what do we mean by a revolution? Leadership of the organization wants a dramatic improvement in service, and they want it fast. Third point, they understand that this improvement in service is not only for the external customer, for the external client, also a dramatic improvement in service is needed inside the organization, between functions, between departments, between levels. So, for example, many large organizations have become siloed in their management structure. And leadership in these organizations, when they realize service between the silos must improve, then they're looking for not just an evolution, but an actual service revolution. And finally, anytime you hear the word revolution, you're generally thinking about something pretty big. And in this case, we'll be talking about organizations with at least 1,000 employees. Large, dramatic. Like when you hear the term the American Revolution. It created an entire country. Or the French Revolution, where it dramatically transformed the nature of governance throughout the country. There was the Russian Revolution. And then later on with Glasnost and Perestroika and the Berlin Wall coming down, another revolution that affected everybody in the entire continent of Europe. There was the Chinese Communist Revolution, and then that was later followed by the Capitalist Revolution. Now, each and every one of us has been involved in a revolution of this scale. Think about it. When was the last time you actually hand wrote a long letter to someone? Probably it hasn't been for quite some time, if ever, if you're a young person. Why? Because all of us are involved in a digital revolution. So what do we mean by a revolution? It's not for companies that already have service in their DNA. It is for companies that want to improve service fast. It's for organizations where leaders want to see an improvement in service inside the organization as well as for those on the outside. And finally, we're talking about something big. Now, why is it that large organizations struggle to achieve successful service revolutions? Well, it's not for lack of understanding the value of service. In other words, people understand that service has a competitive advantage. Service is what creates a better customer experience, more customer satisfaction, loyalty, referrals, recommendations. It's that great service experience that leads to increased share of wallet or market share and increased commercial shareholder value. So it's not for lack of understanding about the value of service, and it's also not for lack of understanding about what you need to do. You know, it's funny. It's almost like I want to improve my health. Well, you know what to do. Eat healthy. Quit smoking. Manage your stress. Get out there and exercise and get a good night's sleep. So it's not that people don't know what to do, but how you actually do it, the common sense about how to bring that into your life, that's where the challenge lies. And the same challenges exist for the common sense about how to bring about an actual revolution in service. For example, many people think that if you want to dramatically improve service performance, focus on the front line. After all, they're the ones that serve your external customers and clients. But what we've discovered, if you want a sustainable revolution, this common sense is wrong. It will actually get in your way. And I'll show you why and what should be done instead in this webinar. Number 2, people will say, hey, focus on standardizing service. Teach everyone common set of skills. Let's use scripts, have key procedures, and that will produce an excellent service experience. The problem is, if you want a revolution in service that makes you superior and have it be sustainable, this common sense is wrong. It will actually get in your way. Third, people think that you should pilot the change. In other words, try it somewhere first and prove it, and then you can scale it out to the whole organization. But for a revolution in service, this common sense, it's wrong. Finally, people say, listen, we've got to have some way of tracking to see whether or not this thing works. Let's focus on those ultimate measures of success, satisfaction, sales, market share. But once again, the common sense is wrong. What we've discovered from working with large organizations all over the world is that this common sense is incorrect. A service revolution requires something different. It requires a dramatic change in the culture. And you know, there are some key leaders who've pulled it off. They've made it happen. One of them, for example, is Lou Gerstner. When he turned around IBM from a product-oriented company to a services organization, he wrote in the book, if I could have chosen not to tackle the IBM culture head-on, I probably would not have. My bias coming in was towards strategy, analysis, measurement. In comparison, changing the attitude and behaviors of hundreds of thousands of people is very, very hard. Yet I came to see that culture isn't just one aspect of the game, it is the game. And that's what we're going to show you in today's webinar. Too many large organizations have what we call a confused service culture. Service, or is it sales? Or is it speed? Or is it innovation? Or is it cutting costs? Or is it improving distribution? The service becomes one of the things, in which case it's a confused service culture. But very successful leading organizations who've pulled off these revolutions or who have service in their DNA, they're not confused about the importance and the priority of service. They get those arrows aligned. And actually, what do? They get their people aligned. And I'm going to show you in today's webinar exactly how you can do that too. Now, at the end of today's webinar, I'll also be giving you some key action steps that you can take if you're a leader, or if you're a member of a key team, or if you're the kind of person who wants to do it yourself. I'll provide resources for that as well. And throughout today's webinar, if you have questions, go to the chat box and type your questions in. At the end of the webinar today, a key member of our Up Your Service team will be answering questions for all of you. Now, pulling off these revolutions requires the use of a proven methodology. And we've come up with what we call an architecture that allows you to engineer the development of a successful and sustainable service culture. And as you can see, there are three key components: education, leadership, and building blocks. You also need an implementation roadmap, getting your leaders aligned, getting the right people on the steering committee, focusing on what we call the 12 building blocks, rolling out effective and actionable service education, and then embedding those practices right into the processes and the systems that you use every day. So we have a proven methodology, and it's very clearly laid out in the New York Times bestseller, Uplifting Service. But this webinar is about how do you implement that methodology and produce a revolution successfully. For this, we've identified 4 rules for a successful service revolution. And here they are. Rule number 1, don't start with customer-facing employees. Instead, involve everyone and put a special focus on your internal service providers. In every business, somebody focuses on the external customer. They do sales, they do installation, they do service handling. It's the contact center, it's the sales force, it's people who are over the counter or over the phone. But behind the scenes, supporting those frontline service providers are your back office people: production, manufacturing, warehousing, marketing, product development and design, IT, finance, HR. Those shared service providers behind the scenes, they are also key people who need to be brought into the revolution. Here's an example with an IT group for a large telecommunications company. They serve external customers in manufacturing, in government, in financial services, in hospitality, in transportation. Inside the company are what's called business stakeholders. They serve the external customers, and clearly that is a service relationship. But supporting the business stakeholders, you have your business-facing demand management team, and you have your IT domains. Now, those are internal service providers, and they need to work with each other, serving one another, so that to the external-facing business stakeholders, it's like they're working with one. But even that is not the whole service ecosystem, because outside the organization are other vendors, suppliers, and partners who provide things like IT hardware and software platforms, or mobile technology, or cloud services. Now, where is service in this whole organization? Well, clearly it's out there to the external customer, but it's also inside and further inside, and also extending outside to that vendor outsource partner area. But then you also have service inside the organization with different groups serving and communicating effectively with each other. And then during ultimate implementation of any particular platform or service requirement, you'll find people from the specialist domains working with people who face the external customer and providing service as well. So, where is service in this situation? Certainly it's here, but it's also here. So who needs to learn how to give better service? Well, if you want to produce a revolution, don't start by focusing only on the external partners or the external service providers. Get everyone together. And here you have an example of huddles. Huddles of service providers inside the organization working with each other, figuring out how can we serve each other better so that those of us who do face the external customer can actually give that person, that customer, a better experience. And here you see the statistical results, dramatic improvement in customer satisfaction and over a very short, limited period of time. Another example, a national airline, where they actually conjured up a vision called Stepping Up Together because they needed everybody to work together to improve service performance to the external passengers. So what does that actually mean? They were a 3-star airline. A new CEO came in and he said, I want to achieve 4-star status and I want to do it in 24 months. And by the way, last year we lost $8 million. 24 months from now, I want us to turn a profit. How did they do that? They had 2,500 people in the airline organization. Now that includes cabin crew and pilots and ground handling and engineers and people in catering and people in IT and reservations and sales, and 100% of the staff of the organization all experienced service education at the same time. Then those people could work together to come up with new action steps and new ideas to improve service. Once they had prioritized and whittled down which of these actions they were going to execute on, once they started to execute, everybody understood the role they needed to play to make this work. So for example, an improved economy class, improved comfort in business class, better caring for children and infants, better in-flight entertainment, an improved meal concept coming from the kitchen all the way out to the passenger tray, improved service in the ground handling at the terminal, and even an entirely new lounge. Now think about which parts of the organization needed to be involved in having all of those things be successfully executed. And the answer is everybody. So when you look at this dramatic improvement in service performance, evidenced by a dramatic increase in compliments per complaint, from 1-to-1 to 10-to-1 over 24 months, that's because everybody was involved, not just the frontline service providers. And what happened? They achieved their 4-star status in 24 months, and this is the CEO and the vice president in charge of customer experience. They went from an $8 million loss to a $30 million profit. Rule number 1, do not start only with your customer-facing employees. Instead, involve everyone and put a special focus on your internal service providers. Rule 2, don't start by training people on skills, scripts, and procedures. Instead, educate them first to a better understanding of what service excellence really means. Now, what do we mean by that? Very few people have got a good definition for service. They have very shallow things like the customer is always right, or make people happy, have them smile, or serve them the way you would like to be served, as if everybody else in the world was just like you. We need a better definition, and here's the one we teach. Service is taking action. You got to do something. And then that action has got to produce some benefit for somebody else. So service is taking action to create value for someone else. A fundamental definition of what is service. Now, the next question is, how do you know what kind of service to provide for the someone else? And here's why education is so important and not just training. Let's say you open a new restaurant and this is your waiter, but he's never been a waiter before. So the first thing you better do is train him. Train him how to bring people to the table, how to present the menu, how to take the order, how to bring the food, how to clear the plate, how to collect the money. He's now well trained. He understands the scripts, he's got the procedure, he knows the standards. But the very first customer he serves turns out to be a business person negotiating a very important contract. Now, what does that customer want? A quiet table in the corner and not to be bothered unless the coffee is running low, and then the waiter should be right there. But the very next customer, they're tourists. They're from out of town. They want to know about everything. They want to talk to the waiter. They want to hear what's on the menu. How is it cooked? Where do you think we should go after lunch? And they want to sit right in the middle of the action. The very next customer comes in and they're on a date. They don't want to focus on the menu. They want to focus on each other. They want the kind of service that makes them feel good about one another. And then the very next customer comes in. It's a family with 2 small children and the kids are upset. Now, what is the likelihood that your well-trained waiter is going to serve these 4 different customers the way they would like to be served? Well, let's be honest, not very likely at all. Why not? I know why not. You forgot to teach your waiter the meaning of service, which is what? Taking action to create value for someone else. You see, your well-trained waiter thought that his job was to do what he was taught to do, take the right actions, follow the procedure. But in this definition, what is the most important component? Service is taking action to create value for someone else. The waiter thinks the most important part is the action he takes. But in truth, the most important part of this definition is how well the waiter understands someone else, so he can appreciate what that person would value and then choose what action to take. This is what we mean when we say educate people to have a better understanding of what service means. Now, what about service excellence? Service excellence is an opinion that someone else has about the quality of service you provide. So, how good or bad is your service? And what we teach is something called the 6 levels of service. The lowest is criminal. You don't even meet the bare minimum expectations. 1 step above that, basic. You get the job done, but it's not pretty. It's late. It's incorrect. It's incomplete. Now, expected is doing what the customer expects you to do. It's just the standard for satisfaction. Above that is when you serve someone the way they'd like to be served. We call that desired. 1 level above that is surprising. When you take an action that's unexpected by the customer, but it produces value that they did not expect to receive and they like. Surprising. And all the way above that is astonishing. It's incredible. Wow. We call that unbelievable. Now here's the trick about these 6 levels of service. They're very good for a customer to be able to say, this is the quality of service that I received from the service you provided. But here's the hook. These are not stairs. It's not fixed. This is an escalator. It's always going down. And why do we say that? Because something you do that's surprising today, tomorrow if you do it again, it won't be surprising. It'll be desired. If you keep doing it, it becomes expected. And after a while, just basic. So then in order to be excellent in service, you've not only got to be doing what somebody else values, but you've got to keep stepping up to the next level because the stairs are always slipping down. So what is service excellence? Well, let's put the definitions together. If excellence is stepping up and service is taking action to create value for someone else, then service excellence is taking the next step up to create more value for someone else. And a service excellence culture is where everyone understands this and puts this to work every day. So when we say in Rule 2, don't start by training people on specific service skills, scripts, and procedures. Educate them first to a better understanding of what service excellence really means. This is what we mean. Rule number 3, don't pilot the change. Instead, go big, go fast. Build momentum for the new culture. Let me give you an example. These are the financials for a hospitality group that used to be called NIIT Resorts. And as you can see, they were going out of business, heading for bankruptcy in the global financial crisis. Instead, what happened? Over 24 months, they dramatically turned it around. Now, this is what the advertising used to look like. And look, what's the focus in the picture? Beautiful blue sea, white beach sand, swimming pool, and green trees. But wait a minute. What can every single resort on this island advertise? Blue sea, white sand, swimming pool, green trees. Something had to change. These folks wanted and needed a revolution. So the first thing they changed was the focus. Not on the property, not on the beach, but the people, the holiday makers that would be coming to enjoy their time at the resort. And then, in a revolutionary style, they changed the actual name of the brand. They rebranded as LUX Resorts and came up with a gorgeous vision of we make each moment matter. What does that actually mean? It means that when a holidaymaker comes to the resort, every single moment of time, that's the most precious resource they have. And so every single member of the team was focused on making that moment matter. Now I want you to see the size and speed of implementation. Look at how quickly, 4 months, 5 months, to get more than 3,000 people educated in this new approach to providing a great service experience. Look at this continuous increase in number of man-hours per team member as revenue came back from 2009 after the crisis right up to 2014. And look at these actual results. TripAdvisor scores in the top 10 for 4 properties on the island, when prior to the revolution, they'd never been in the top 10 before. And for their properties in other locations like Maldives and Réunion, again, into the top 10. But here's the real turnaround. Look at the consequential results. The former financials, and then the financials just over the next few years. So when we say that the rule is not to pilot the change, don't start with one resort, don't start with one product line, don't start with one customer, don't start with one geography. If you want a service revolution, you got to go big, you got to go fast, because you've got to build momentum for that new culture. And finally, rule number 4, don't focus on traditional KPIs. If you want a revolution, then focusing on things like satisfaction score, operational measures, increase in sales or profits, that's not the place to focus. A revolution needs your focus on what we call the leading indicators. In other words, the number of new ideas, the number of new actions taken that will actually drive the revolutionary results. Let me show you what we mean. When we talk about measuring what matters in a revolution, some people, and all too often very senior leaders, say, I want to see the financial results. Show me an increase in top-line revenue, bottom-line profit, shareholder value. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that's a lagging indicator. You've got to get your revolution to occur first in order for those results to be achieved. So what would be a leading indicator that you're going to get those lagging results? Aha! Your index scores, your survey scores. Now this is where we're looking at things like satisfaction score, loyalty index, internal employee engagement score. When all of those are going up, you're going to get the ultimate business objectives. But you don't necessarily survey every day. So how can you keep your finger on the pulse? How can you know you're actually doing a good job right now? And the leading indicator for that is compliments, positive feedback, pat on the back, 5-star rating, attaboys. But how do you actually get one of those positive compliments? Compliments are not given for providing service to someone that they expect. Compliments are given for new ideas. Compliments are given to you when someone takes an unexpected action. When they come up with a, hey, let's do this for that customer, or here's a good idea for that particular client. Those are the drivers of all of these other results. Of course, the problem is senior leadership is too often focused on the ultimate objectives, talking about profit, talking about shareholder value. But if you've got thousands of people in a large organization, where can they actually do something about it? And the answer to that is right down at the originating level, which is new ideas and new actions. So let me show you a couple of examples. LUX Resorts again. They knew that it was the innovation of new ideas that was going to make the revolution succeed, and created something called the LUX Innovation Challenge. The first year, the entire challenge was, how do we innovate to increase the loyalty of our guests? Hundreds of ideas generated, scores of ideas implemented, dramatic improvement results. Second year, changed the nature of the contest. How do we increase the loyalty of our team members? Because once their service started improving and their new brand and their reputation was taking off, all of the other resorts wanted to poach away staff members. So they had an entire year's innovation contest, new ideas and new actions to increase the loyalty of team members. Year number 3, innovate to increase revenues. Come on, how do we actually make more money, attract more revenue from all of the people who come onto our properties? And these were so successful that if you look at what's called RevPAR, or revenue per available room, a common metric in the hospitality industry, you can see that each person coming on property actually spent more money and their satisfaction levels went up. How did they do that? By focusing on the leading indicator of new ideas and new actions. One more example. This is an IT company based in India, NIIT Technologies. And they started out by doing cost arbitrage. In other words, they could do technology less expensively than their clients who were based in other markets around the world, the United States, Europe, etc. But they realized that they wanted to be for their clients not only a lower cost vendor, they wanted to be a trusted advisor. They wanted to become a partner to help them design the future and be counted on to be their technology partner to create that future. So they came up with a wonderful new positioning statement: new ideas, more value. What does it mean? We will generate new ideas for you, our customer, which will help to create more value. And they created a lovely logo that went with it, the light bulb and two sides of the brain. And then they realized, we got to get these ideas out of people's heads, out of their brains, and get them into action. And so what did they do? They created an innovation, ideas, and action contest called Ignite. And they focused on these 5 key themes: challenging the status quo, thinking customer, unleashing new ideas, taking ownership, and improving continuously. That Ignite platform to uplift service was then created. They collected thousands of new ideas, prioritized those into hundreds that would actually work well, and then took scores of them and put them into action. And then ultimately celebrated not only the people who'd come up with the ideas, not only the departments that had put them into action, but ultimately the Ignite Shield was awarded by the CEO to the teams that created the largest amount of actual customer value. And you can see that this is the kind of thing that scales throughout the entire organization, because rule number 4 puts the competition way behind. Hey, where's the competition? Way back there. Rule number 4, don't focus on traditional KPIs if what you want to achieve is a service revolution. Instead, focus on the leading revolution indicators, ideas that generate value, and putting those new ideas into action. What have we got here? 4 rules for a revolution. 1, don't start with your customer-facing employees. Instead, get everybody involved. 2, don't start by focusing on skills and scripts and procedures. Teach people the meaning of service excellence. 3, don't pilot the change. Go big, go fast. You've got to create momentum for a new culture. And number 4, keep your focus where everything really counts and begins, on the volume of new ideas and new actions that will drive your revolution to success. Now, you'll find all of what I've shared today in the webinar in the final section of this book, Uplifting Service, which of course you can find online or in some of the best bookstores around the world. That's where you'll see how to actually get those arrows aligned, how to get your people aligned. And here are 3 specific actions that you can take. You might be concerned about aligning your senior leadership team. How do you get people in all of the operational areas, or all the geographic locations, or covering all the different product lines or customer segments to have a common understanding of what's it going to take to engineer the development of a culture? What needs to happen? These top leadership team members need to see the fundamental architecture. They need to understand what people need to learn. They need to understand their own role as role models, the behaviors in leadership, and they need to appreciate what we call the 12 building blocks of service culture, a topic for an entirely new webinar coming up. Here they are, 12 building blocks, which you can read about in the book, and you can find a lot more about online. But this is what we're teaching in a service leadership workshop, and not just the architecture. We want to show your leadership team how to actually implement this. What does it mean to get that leadership team aligned in a service leadership workshop? How do you keep them aligned over the 12-month implementation period? Who should be on that steering committee? Where do those members come from? What is their job? How often do they need to meet? Which of the 12 building blocks should people start moving on first? Where are the quick wins? Where are you going to get an impact early, and then which will take longer? And then, how do you cascade that education for service excellence, actionable service education throughout the organization? Who should become your workshop leaders? Who are those high potentials that you want to infuse with this education so they in turn can bring it to other people inside the company, across the organization, in every different department? And then finally, what does it mean to actually embed this into your processes and systems? So just by going to work, people will be constantly reinforced and understand how do we actually give somebody else, whether it's internal or external, a better service experience. We teach all of this in one day so that a leadership team can understand that there is a proven methodology, an architecture that you can use to engineer the development of a service culture and do it successfully and sustainably over a period initially of just 12 months. Now, you may have not the top leadership team, but you may have an actual functional team, a group of people who work together, and you want to help them improve their service performance or achieve superior service. You want that particular team to build a common service language, upgrade the service that they provide at each and every point of contact. You want them to add value to the customer experience and take personal responsibility for action. How do you do that? If you have a team like this, be in touch with us and we can bring to you one of our core workshops. In achieving superior service, people will learn that definition of service, taking action to create value for someone else. They'll learn the 6 levels of service, the 4 categories of value, the critical perception points, and how do you actually build that culture of taking personal responsibility. So if you're responsible for a particular team of service providers, let us know and we can bring this also to you. And finally, if you're more of a do-it-yourself type, or if you've enjoyed this webinar and you want more resources and you want them right now, please go to our website at upyourservice.com. You'll find out more there about actually what we do as we help organizations successfully implement sustainable service revolutions. You can see the clients that we do it for in different industries, different cultures, different languages, different countries all over the world. The methodology works. We've got a whole range of free resources for you, from quotes to posters to other tools and assessments that you can download. You can find out about upcoming events, either physical events where you're located or other webinars like this online. And then, of course, you can subscribe to our blog. We'd love to be in touch with you on a regular basis, and thank you so much for being here today. Now, if you have any other questions you'd like to ask, be sure you go to the chat box and type in your question, because we'll be shifting now to a Q&A period. I want to thank you again for coming to this webinar, Engineering a Service Revolution, how you can establish a strong service culture and improve service quality fast. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.